Yep, but some stories need to be changed, don't they? Grimm's, that is the Grimm's brothers' tales. Some of them were horrific. Even as adults, it's hard for me to get my head around. If you remember, do you remember the little paragraph that you have in the book where you give an example? Tell us.
Yes, the children who played at slaughtering, which is one of the original from the very first edition of Grimm's Tales. It's a story about essentially two boys who watch their father slaughter a pig. They go, "That looks like fun." One of them cuts the other one's throat. Their mother, who's upstairs bathing their baby sibling, hears the screams, comes downstairs, sees one of the children dead and the other one waving a knife. She grabs the knife, stabs the other boy to death. Then she goes back upstairs and discovers that the child she's left in the bath has drowned, so she kills herself. Then the husband comes home, discovers this scene of devastation, and I think either dies of grief or kills himself also. And that's the end of the story. It's not what you call susceptible to the Disney treatment. But I think the thing it's easy to forget, and the Grimms are a whole separate conversation, is that the Grimm brothers were not writing children's stories. Originally, they were essentially comparative sociolinguists or ethnographers. What they were interested in doing was collecting what they saw as a body of German folklore which would express the true Germanic culture before it was destroyed by industrialization and the arrival of the modern age. And I mean, the idea of trying to find a pure, true Germanic culture, obviously, this side of the 20th century looks a bit less attractive as a project than it did then. But they were basically doing something quite adult and anthropological. And it was only many, many editions of these folk tales down the line when they'd excised some of the weirder and darker ones. They'd made some of the endings less horrible. They prettied the stories up and they gave them a sort of shape that their wild folkloric antecedents didn't have. And they started to kind of essentially domesticate them and turn them into what we now think of as fairy tales. Right. And at the same time, they did a sort of edition which had shorter stories and illustrations, and they suddenly realised, basically, suddenly children were interested in these things. Grimm's stories, which started out, as I say, as one sort of thing, ended up being fairy tales for children, but that's certainly not how they started out.
When I read that story in your book, I wondered what is the point of that story, but the fact is that this is something that can happen in a world which is dark.
Yeah.
Not everything ends with, and they lived happily ever after.
No, exactly.